any child should be vulnerable enough and feel safe enough to share how they are feeling with their parents without feeling judged by their parents. Are you happily married, single and searching, or single and not searching? You're in the right space. We're all students of life, and we're here to celebrate and explore the secrets of long-lasting relationships and marriages.
In each episode, we dive deep into topics like communication, family dynamics, parenting, finances, health, and wellness.
Join us on this exciting journey as we create stronger, healthier, and more fulfilling relationships, one episode at a time. Welcome to Life on Stereo. Hello, lifers. Welcome to Life on Stereo. We are your hosts, Judith
and Kingsley.
And we are so excited to be back here. We are new in this space and in what we're doing on YouTube. New venture we are, getting into. But we are so excited, and we appreciate each and every one of you that has been supporting so far. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for sharing and just being here with us in this space.
Yeah.
Okay, so we want to jump right in. Today we have something juicy to talk about. And
it's a juicy topic.
It is, right? Yeah. Today we are talking about intimacy. Yes, intimacy. And right off the bat, like when we hear intimacy, most people are, your mind just goes straight to physical, intimacy, sexual almost. But today we want to go beyond physical intimacy. We want to talk about intimacy as a whole, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Different viewpoints or faces or... Yeah,
different aspects of intimacy. So today's episode is titled Intimacy Going Beyond the Physical, right? So let's jump right in. When we say intimacy, what are we talking about?
Yeah. So, I thought about this, and when I Googled it, at least it talked about close friendship and familiarity with someone.
Yeah.
And so that's and I was quite impressed that was the first definition, because the Google definition did not really go straight into the sex part. Talked about being familiar and close with someone. So that was the first one.
Yeah.
And then the third definition, the second one was about an intimate environment and so on. And then the third one was when it said that intimacy as a word can be used euphemistically to represent sex.
Right.
Right. So intimacy, I believe, is closeness, familiarity, everything that has to do with getting to know someone physically, emotionally, getting to know them through and through.
Right.
And when it comes to relationships, everything that involves that. So anything that you can do to achieve that level of closeness has to do with intimacy, in my opinion.
Yeah. That's really good. So what is standing out to me is that word closeness.
Closeness,
right? So that means proximity. You'd have to know someone not from afar, but right close. So, even for instance, like some of us, we have like mentors, mentor-mentee relationships. And some mentors from afar. And just as an example, it's difficult to know someone for who they are if you're not, even geographically close. Or some sort of like closeness. Yeah. Well, now, for the sake of technology, you can, talk to someone on all the media that is possible. Zoom, FaceTime, WhatsApp, and all that. But just to carry the heart of it, that it is almost impossible to know someone from afar.
Yes.
You can appreciate the person from afar. You can have some surface information about the person from afar, but to know the person, to achieve intimacy, familiarity, you need to be close.
Yes.
You need to be close and consistent, building upon knowledge upon knowledge upon knowledge upon experience with a person. And the other word, familiarity, it brings knowing.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, okay, closeness and familiarity. You can be physically, close to someone,
yeah.
but not be familiar. That word like just rings in my ears, like, and knowing something about that person, whether it is, their thought, their vision, their passion. If you don't engage the person, even though you are close, and what comes to my mind is like in a workspace,
Yeah.
you can have colleagues and you're all working in the same,
office, yeah.
yeah, in a very small space.
Yeah, but you definitely will not know them if you don't intentionally get.
Yeah.
So, so one word, I mean, a word stuck out to me when you were speaking was when you said building.
Right.
And then when I just spoke as well, I the word being intentional.
Intentional, yeah.
So in order to pursue intimacy, there has to be an intentionality element to it.
Yeah.
So if you want to build intimacy with me, you would have to be intentional about it. We don't leave it to chance and say, oh, it's going to come together, it's going to happen, and so on. So being intentional. And when you spoke, you said building.
Yeah.
So intimacy is something that has to be built. Even though, you might meet someone and start dating and you have the chemistry and everything, but that's only like a foundation to the whole thing.
Yeah.
So intimacy has to be built on as the time goes by.
Yeah. And when we're talking, like, what comes to mind is even parents-child relationship.
Right.
You can live with your parents for years, maybe 20 years, and then you do something like, I didn't know my child was like that.
Yeah.
And it surprises both parties that my parents didn't know I'm like that, and the parents are also surprised that my child is like that.
Exactly.
And it really comes down to what you said, intentionality.
Yes.
To know, I'm intentionally finding out about my child, how my child behaves, what my child responds to, what kind of affirmation they respond to best, all those dynamics. And I think that is really important, because I don't want to put it out there, but something happened in your office, right?
Right.
Someone did something unfortunate, right? And lost his life, but I don't want to use the word because, for all those, And then everybody in the office was surprised that, what? This man has been walking around here, like, we thought we knew this person. But then you realize, no, you don't know. You are close to the person physically,
in the office
but you
space,
you are not
him.
familiar with the person, right? So we want to talk about the different aspects. Let's start with intellectual intimacy.
Yeah.
What would you say intellectual intimacy is?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about 5 different facets of intimacy. So starting with intellectual intimacy. So we've already talked about intimacy having to do with knowing someone. So in terms of intellectual intimacy, I believe this would have to do with sharing ideas and thoughts with a person, trying to get into their head, not in a negative way, but to be able to be on that similar wavelength with a person, such that you have certain discussions, so that I know your stance when it comes to certain issues, certain intellectual issues like education, your stance when it comes to things that are general. But so if I'm on a level of intimacy with you, especially with spouses, husbands and wives.
Yeah.
It's very important, I think, to know where your husband stands on certain points or certain topics, and where your wife stands on certain things. Also for parent-children relationship, it's important to know what your children think about certain issues. So that can be one way of looking at intellectual intimacy.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with you. To know a person's thought on different things, like, you know, like for instance, like issues come up in the world, right? Even current events, they come up in the world, and then you're having a conversation with somebody, and then you're like, I didn't know you think like that about this. For instance, maybe this war in Russia and Ukraine and now in Israel, you know, like things like that come up, and then maybe you've never thought about it, but then it could be an opportunity to talk about world peace. What do you think about that? Is an intellectual topic, right? And so it can be an opportunity to talk about that. And it's people don't appreciate that people can get close over such conversations.
Exactly.
You know, but then if you think about it, there are like political associations, like religious associations. Why? Because they are bonding on that level. And in some like organizations, like people call themselves brothers and sisters, you know, because they feel the bond. And it will surprise you that in such quarters, people can do so much for somebody that the world will think this person is a stranger to you. But to them, they are not, because they've bonded and they've become so close on the level of intellect, you know, and we can get to disregard it, that it's not important, but it's so important.
It's very important,
right? But then I wanted to touch on the dynamic of intellectual intimacy in marriage specifically, because we're talking about thoughts on, you know, particular aspects of life and events and all that. Now, do married couples or even like people in relationship, do they have to be on the same page intellectually to have intimacy intellectually?
Well, so, you know, so
I'm putting you on the spot.
I know. So earlier when I was talking about this intellectual intimacy, I spoke about, you know, sharing thoughts, knowing what the person's stance is. So for me, it has nothing to do with having the same opinion on certain issues.
Right.
So if it's a political issue, let's say, for example, in the US, a husband can be Republican, the wife can be Democrat. Doesn't matter, as long as I know what your stance or what your opinion is, and what where you lean towards, your reasoning for that and so on. That's fine. We don't have to be of the same view to share intimacy. The more we talk about it and we share our opinions and even our disagreements, it makes us grow and get closer and closer to each other. We just need to make sure that it doesn't, develop into hostile arguments and stuff like that. That's something that we need to work on, seriously from time to time. So as long as we are in a healthy space and we are discussing having intellectual arguments in quotation. So intellectual discussions, let me say that. So
I like that.
If we're having those intellectual discussions and you disagree with me, that's absolutely fine. We still build intimacy through that.
But don't people feel that if you disagree with me, then you're not supporting me, right? If I have a different opinion from yours, maybe on a political issue or on a social issue, does it mean I'm not on your side?
Well, the thing,
there's a tendency to feel that
I know.
Hey, you're not supporting me, right?
Yeah, and the thing with politics is it can get really passionate. So
Really?
sometimes I just advise that if you are in party A and your husband is in party B, and you see, depends. The husband could be very, neutral and not so passionate about it.
Yeah.
The wife could be super passionate about it because they know maybe what the party has done for them in the past, their past experiences and so on. So if you just study everything and you realize that the other person is really passionate about it, and it might be a bit insensitive on your part to really go attacking the other person's opinion or stance on an issue. So this relates to everything as well. So sometimes there could be complaints that you're not supporting me and so on, depending on the situation. For example, if the husband is being employed by a certain party, your husband works for.
That is good.
Yeah, let's say your husband works
at
the government office and is a government appointee.
Right.
And came into power because of, let's say, the Red Party.
Yeah.
And then you as a wife, you've been in the Blue Party all your life.
Yeah.
And now you're married and, the sort of your livelihood is coming from an opportunity provided by a party.
This is good.
The Red Party, right?
Yeah.
So at that point, you have to be a bit sensitive. Even though you have viewpoints that the Blue Party is a better party, you try to, just in the name of supporting, being a supportive wife or husband, you try to be more sensitive and not go too hard.
I agree 100% with you about being sensitive. Like you can have the discussion and bond so that I know where you stand on this A, B, C, and that is the closeness. I know it. I'm familiar with it, and it helps me relate with you on that level. I know what is a sore spot for you intellectually. So I don't, overdrive it, to really, press some buttons. So I think that is good. So bonding intellectually is also important. Okay. So now let's jump into emotional intimacy.
And I also wanted to say, before that as well, like some of the ways you could bond intellectually,
right?
Because you could have discussions, and you can also share or read books together. Like you find a book which you think is really interesting, you can
read it together
and discuss and so on.
What do you think about that?
So many ways you can
go for public events.
Exactly. So you go and listen to debates and lectures and stuff like that
on different things. For instance, we bond on music. Right? We bond in the, so anything music, like we are eager to really go and have a feel. Like we go to concerts, we listen, and it helps us bond. It's beautiful.
And music is, of course, not just the entertainment part. There's like the academic or intellectual part of music. So which I think is really good too.
Yes.
So emotional intimacy.
Intimacy. Maybe I should. So emotional intimacy is bonding or having, closeness on the level of your emotions, how you feel, being able to share how you feel, being vulnerable with how you feel, no matter how that feeling is, being vulnerable with it, with your partner, without feeling judged, right? So I feel that is emotional intimacy, knowing that I can share however I am feeling with you without feeling that you're judging me, you know? Yeah, because I'm saying that because not all emotions are positive or exciting emotions.
Right.
You know, we have happy emotions. You can be joyous, you can be happy, you can be excited, but then you can also be angry. You can also, have negative emotions. You can feel a little sad and depressed at certain times.
Yeah.
But then feeling that safe, or closeness or familiarity with someone enough to be able to open up to the person, to be vulnerable. That's I keep coming to the word vulnerable, because it is a vulnerable thing when somebody is sharing how they are feeling on the inside.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's a difficult thing for people to do because you don't know who to trust with it. And I feel that especially in the area of family bonds, whether parents, child, any child should be vulnerable enough and feel safe enough to share how they are feeling with their parents without feeling judged by their parents or without feeling muted by their parents.
Right.
You feel that, no, I can't share this with my parents because they're not going to listen, or they're going to downplay how I'm feeling. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that is emotional intimacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and when you talk about being vulnerable, I think that when there's that situation where, depending on the dynamics of your relationship, people also have, maybe we need to talk about that as well, because people have different temperaments, and sometimes the temperaments can determine how much they like to be vulnerable. And also has to do with knowledge and exposure, right? Because some people feel like if I let people know my weaknesses, they will use it against me and so on. So they've built some kind of automatic defense mechanism where the wife doesn't want to tell the husband how she's feeling. The husband doesn't want to tell the wife how he's feeling. But it is tried, tested, and proven that when you open up to your spouse or your partner, it builds your level of closeness and familiarity, because then you tell them things you wouldn't tell anyone else. And what actually makes, if you look at even friends, you could have a group of 5 friends. Those who are very close are those who sort of share secrets, So in this stead, like, secrets is like, being vulnerable, like telling them things or feelings or emotions you wouldn't have shared with anyone else. And that's something that really builds the bond in relationships.
I remember when we got married, of course, it takes time. For me, I feel that vulnerability is not difficult, or on the other hand, is easier, it's easier when you feel safe. Like, nobody can be vulnerable and spill out the way they really, people can say, oh, how are you? I'm happy. Oh, I'm sad. Like, generally. But then to really go deep down and tell you why they are feeling like that, and then really like spill it out to you, it takes safety. Like, if the person feels safe, accepted, loved, and not judged, it's inevitable. It might take time. It will take time, I say. Because I was going to give an example, like when we got married. Of course, I know that I'm safe with you and all that. But then I think that it took time for some things to, for me to be vulnerable with some things. For instance, like when I gave birth to our first child, I was almost depressed. I couldn't say that I was depressed, right? But you virtually didn't know about it because it's like I was on and off, and I was just keeping everything in. But then I was struggling.
Right.
I was struggling because I'd moved to a new country. We were by ourselves and the pandemic had just hit.
Yeah.
And so I gave birth in the peak of the pandemic.
Yeah.
You were not even in the hospital when I was giving birth.
That's not allowed, yeah.
Yeah, so it was like a whole lot, was happening. So I was just spiraling down. But I thank God I came out of it. But then I didn't even tell you when it was happening.
Right.
I told you after I had, come out of it. And so like it's really important that we especially for married couples, like you invest, like the word that you kept using, intentionally make each other feel safe enough to be vulnerable with how they are feeling. Recently I shared something with you and it was very vulnerable for me because I'm like, what if you don't like what I shared, or you misunderstand what I shared? But I felt safe enough to share. And then it only brings us closer, right? So I think that emotional vulnerability is very, very, very important in a relationship.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was going to say, like, from this example you gave, right? There are situations where one party is not sharing, and sometimes it takes time, just like you said, and it might not necessarily mean that the other party doesn't love. Like, let's say if the man is not sharing, it doesn't necessarily mean that he doesn't love the woman, or doesn't necessarily mean that he doesn't feel safe enough
to share.
All that might be could be a mix of many things, temperaments.
Nothing is like straightforward like that.
Exactly. So sometimes we also need a good amount of patience, and I've seen that, in relationships, whenever you want to see a certain virtue or a certain value or character in your spouse or partner or someone you're in a relationship with, it's best you start to sort of exhibit that. So then they learn from you.
Yeah.
So we can do that by, as you said, not judging the person when they say the little things.
Why are you feeling like that?
Yeah.
You're so weak.
Exactly.
What is this?
Yeah. I mean, if you say something like that and, the person's ego is bruised and stuff like that, you can almost be certain that they will never share anything with you.
They're not going to share.
So, that's something that I think we also need to pay attention to, that some people can share very easily. Some people don't have that ability yet. Everyone has the ability of sharing, but then it takes a matter of time and finessing to get things out of some people.
And I feel that all these things, they are like muscles, and we have to work them for it to, sometimes when you haven't done something before, it feels difficult. It feels like, no, I just can't do this. No, I can't share. Because I was listening to a podcast, and then the lady was telling the husband that there is this particular couple, they've been married for like 7 years, and she was talking to this person, and then she was like, this thing you're sharing with me, why don't you share it with your husband? She was like, nah, I can't share this with my... And she was like, what? You guys have been married 7 years.
7 years.
And so sometimes it's not like we said, it can be a number of things working here, right?
Yeah.
It could be personal temperament, and it's a muscle you have to work on. It might feel painful at the beginning, but the more you work it, you realize that you become better at sharing. And this strategy that she gave, like, if you feel maybe your partner, or even as parents, you feel your child is not sharing something that is really in their heart, why don't you start?
Yeah.
Why don't you start being the vulnerable one and being an example to them?
Exactly.
And I want to stress that when it comes to relationships, this tip is like treasure, is like gold. It's like when you feel the person you're in a relationship, no matter that kind of relationship, is not demonstrating a particular virtue that you start.
Yeah.
You just start. You will be surprised how the person will respond to you in that same, level. Yeah, come to you in that same. So how can we build emotional intimacy? Are there some ways that we can, if somebody says, okay, I hear what you guys are saying, but how do I do this? At least give me one or two things to do.
Yeah, and we have spoken a lot about talking, like speaking with a person, and for someone to feel safe, I think listening, showing them that you're listening to them and not hearing them, but actually listening. And so when they tell you something, you show that personal interest in what they are saying. I think it's one way that we can build emotional
exactly
intimacy.
Yeah. And then also what she said, which I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but when she said like start it.
Yeah.
If the other person is not sure, you start it. It will be like, hey, okay, this is something I can do as well.
Yeah.
And then like regular checking is, hey, how are you feeling? How are you feeling about this?
Yeah.
Are you okay? Okay, the person says, I'm okay. Especially for women, we like to say, oh, I'm fine. I'm okay. Just to brush it off. But maybe another time, constant checking with each other. Yeah. So that's good.
So that was that number 3 or number 2? That was number 2. Wow.
We might have to make this 2 parts.
Yeah, but let's see how it goes. Maybe we get it all in.
Let's talk about social intimacy. Intimacy.
Do you want to explain that?
Oh yeah, I heard this from T.D. Jakes.
Yeah,
Bishop T.D. Jakes, and he was preaching, and then he says intimacy is like intimacy, and I was like, yeah, that was great. Intimacy. So something that may not be so obvious, but then because you are searching, you are intentional about getting to know me, getting to be familiar and close to me, you are diving deep.
You then get to see that find out. Yeah.
Get to see.
So social intimacy.
Yeah.
Basically connecting over shared social events or social activities.
And friends.
And so on. Yeah. So I mean when we get married, sometimes I have realized that we tend to cut off a lot of friends, and I agree sometimes if like the friends that are not really beneficial to your current relationship, that I agree.
Sure.
But it's very important that we also sometimes have certain social activities with other friends, other couples, and so on, right? So yeah. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think it's really important because you, especially for married couples, right? You're living your separate lives. You have your separate social circles.
Yeah.
Now you have to fuse these 2 social circles together.
Yeah.
So what were you doing in your social life when you were a single person, right? Maybe you used to go here, you used to enjoy these, or you still do. Yeah. So you enjoy going to these social events.
Yeah.
You enjoy going to these social, places and enjoying these social activities. And then you have these set of friends. Okay. So, and then I'm not saying that, I think it comes over time and then it comes gradually, and I don't want to say naturally. some of it you do it intentionally and then you cut it out, but then it will grow naturally. You realize that some of your friends, because you will get to introduce your friends to your partner as time goes on. And then, like you said, whatever friendships in your social circles that are not profitable or beneficial for your union, it just starts to distance itself. And I just want to make a point here. Probably when you're single, you have some very good friends. You know, now you get married, you would have to be intentional if they are connections, social connections and friendships that you want to keep. You think these friendships are priceless. You have to bring your spouse in on it. I feel that is a great way to do that. It doesn't mean that your spouse is always calling the person you're chatting, but then when you bring your partner into that friendship, no matter how close or you get to keep that friendship, because like you say, you don't have to throw away all your friends just because you got married, right? You are having the opportunity to extend friendship, so your friends become my friends and my friends become your friends. The level of friendship might be different, right? But then how beautiful is it that you have these set of friends and a couple of them become my friends as well, that we are both comfortable enjoying social activities together with them. I feel that it's great.
And it is, I mean, we might not talk so much on social intimacy, but it's something which is very important. And sometimes we pick up by getting to know other people in these social gatherings and so on, we are able to pick up things. And sometimes you even get to find out things about your spouse that you didn't know. Like you have, you go on like a double date, or let's say you host a gathering at home, invite other couples to come in, other families. Then you're all having a discussion. Then your spouse says something like, that's actually what he thinks about this. You may or may not agree, but at least it makes you your level of intimacy with the person also much stronger.
You know, it's actually one tip I usually give single people, that if you want to get to know the person you're with in a relationship a little bit more, get to meet their friends, get to see them be themselves or be who they are as they interact with other people, right? Because sometimes, new love, new attraction, new feelings and all that, they may not show you a side of themselves because everything is so played out in our heads. But then when we meet our friends that we've known for years, everything is gone. All the, walls are gone and we're just ourselves. And you can get to know quite a lot when you meet those circles.
Awesome. So should we maybe move on to the fourth one?
Yes, I think we don't want to drag it. So let's go. So we've talked about intellectual, emotional, social. Now let's talk about spiritual intimacy.
And don't worry, we're coming to sexual intimacy as well.
We're coming there. We're coming there.
So spiritual intimacy. What do you want to say about that?
So again, intimacy is what? Closeness, familiarity. So spiritual intimacy is closeness or familiarity on the level of spiritual beliefs, spiritual practices. Right.
And at this point, so that it's quite, now when we're talking about the other, like intellectual intimacy, we did say you may not be on the same page, but that's fine. When it comes to spiritual intimacy, it's a little bit, more complicated than that. I personally think that it's not going to be the easiest thing to have spiritual intimacy with someone when you have very distinctly different spiritual
I like that.
beliefs.
Distinctly different.
Yeah.
It's just opposite. Like,
Yeah, exactly. You could both be in like a same religion, different denominations or different sects of the religion. Okay, so that's not very, very different. But if you are in like
core spiritual beliefs,
if for example, one is a Christian, one is an atheist.
spiritual beliefs don't happen in a vacuum. Spiritual beliefs go with spiritual practices. Right. So when you can have different spiritual beliefs, right? And respect, but then the bond, we're talking about closeness and oneness, right? So when you have the same spiritual beliefs, undergirding what you do, it informs what you do. It informs how you do things, right? It informs your understanding of things and then how you move in life, right?
Yeah.
Even decisions that you're taking, your spiritual beliefs are pouring into that and influencing that. So it's important because for instance, if you're practicing something, if you have a particular spiritual belief that, for instance, we are Christians, so I say, I'm going to church on Sundays, but you don't have the same understanding or belief as me.
And I probably think we should use Sunday for
we're
family,
going Shin, we're going to ski, we're going here to bond with our family. I'm like, no, this is important to me. Then it becomes a place and,
becomes an issue then.
Rather than bond you. So it's really, really important. We can't stress this enough that you have similar spiritual beliefs and practices, so that you can experience things together. Spiritually, like on that level, you can experience things together.
Exactly. So I mean, you could possibly respect each other's beliefs if they are different. That's fine, but it's not in terms of making you bond. Sometimes there are certain elements, as you said, that could, instead of helping the level of intimacy, would rather become a bane, so to say. Should we move to the next one?
Yes, what everybody has been waiting for. Let's not kid each other here. But we left it for towards the end because we see all these other aspects of intimacy pouring into or even affecting sexual intimacy, right? So we know that sexual intimacy is being intimate with each other sexually, physically, but it goes beyond that, right? It goes beyond that because we are talking about a connection in trust, right? In trust, because when it comes to sexual intimacy, it is not just the bodies, the physical bodies working here. The mind, the emotions, emotions are mixed in here. So if we are not bonding on an emotional level, how are we going to bond on a physical level? On the sexual level, it will happen, of course, because I feel that when it happens like that, sexual, relations becomes more of dutiful. It becomes dutiful for both because you know that, hey, I'm married to this man or I'm married to this woman and I have to, we have to fulfill each other's sexual desires and all that. But then it is not an opportunity to bond and become closer. Because if we are not feeding each other emotionally and then being vulnerable on that level, then it's missing when that relation is going on.
Exactly. And sometimes we downplay the other forms of intimacy, and exactly because in the society that we live in, intimacy has been made to mean very, very physical, the sexual part of it. So we sometimes feel like if I'm having sex with you, I'm being intimate with you, I'm showing you that I love you, and that's it. But you realize that if you allow yourself to get closer to someone emotionally, intellectually, then when it comes to the physical or the sexual intimacy aspect, it becomes a lot more heightened and even more pleasurable, so to say. So it's not just the physical thing, as you said. It has to do with a lot communication. It has to do with, getting deeper into the person's feelings and, making the person feel safe. And that's how we are able to achieve that higher level of intimacy with our partner.
Because this is really important. Maybe we'll have another episode where we talk about maybe sexual intimacy or something. But it's really important because if you're not mindful of how your partner, your spouse is emotionally or, or spiritually, you don't know how to approach that person, even, in a sexual relation. Because, for instance, if the person has been vulnerable enough to share with you something that unfortunately has happened to him or her when they were young, sexually, that has, is still being dealt with as part of their emotional baggage, knowing that tells you how to relate with your partner sexually. Because if you are doing things that triggers this person's trauma, even though this person loves you and you also love the person, you are triggering this person because you have not spent time and invested yourself in finding out, all these other aspects. And then when it comes to, how all these facets of intimacy tie into sexuality, I feel that it even has something to do with how we can be faithful and loyal to each other. Because haven't you heard, like countless men say, oh, I had sex with this other woman, but I don't feel anything for her. Well, if you treasure the connection that you have with this person intellectually, socially, emotionally, spiritually, and sexually, it becomes the sexual act does not separate itself from the others, such that if there is an opportunity, or even if you are tempted with someone else, you're like, but I don't have all these connection with this person, so I can't share this with you because it's it's holistic, right? So we just believe that it's important. And when it comes to sexual intimacy, we feel that how can we build, what are some of the ways that we can build sexual intimacy? And I feel that open communication is one.
Open communication.
Research has shown that women tend not to express their sexual desires because most of the times they are not satisfied sexually. And how does that happen? They are not able to communicate what they want, in terms of sexual relations and all that. So I think that open communication being, and it goes back towards emotional intimacy, right? Because if the person does not feel vulnerable, the person is not able to tell you or to share with you how they, want things to be done.
And also, I mean, there's a level of intimacy you get from actually learning new things, experimenting. So if you try new things as a couple, if you, just to, how is it usually say, spice things up a bit. You want to try new things sexually so that you can, grow and bond more in that space. And of course, make sure that you pay attention to all the first 4 levels of
holistic intimacy,
so that the last one, which is quite important to a lot of people, would be much better.
Great.
Wow, it's been
a long one, and hey, we're glad you stay through with us.
Yes,
we're doing this together, so hey, this is life and we are doing it together. This is a safe place. We hope. So go ahead, share what you think about all that we've talked about today. Share your thoughts, share your experience with us, and we will be glad to hear from you.
Yeah, share your stories with us. If you want to send them to us
anonymously,
you can share stories with us. We'll read them, have a discussion with people about it on our social media platforms. If you want to share it there directly for other people to learn from you as well, by all means, feel free to do that. And let's build each other up, and let's build this community together.
Yeah. So remember to like this video, subscribe, click the notification bell so that when we release new videos, you will be notified. And if you're listening on podcast, on any podcast streaming platform that you are listening to, go ahead and give this podcast a review so that it will be recommended to more people. Again, it has been Live on Stereo, and we will see you in the next episode. Have a lovely one.
Have a good one. See you later.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Live on Stereo. We hope you found our conversation insightful and inspiring.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, share, or leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us.
Do well to follow us on all our social media platforms. See you in the next episode.